Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about Danny Phantom: A Glitch in Time, and how it's kind of a hot mess, and really does a disservice to the Ultimate Enemy episode of Danny Phantom. But first, before I dive into all that, let's recap a bit. Danny Phantom was a very popular Nickelodeon cartoon that aired from 2004 to 2007, when it was unfortunately cancelled. Now, the series did receive a conclusion, but many were kind of so-so on it, feeling like it was the weakest episode of the franchise. Me personally, I don't mind it or season 3 of Danny Phantom all that much, but I understand where the criticism is coming from. And after many years, it seemed like Nickelodeon had heard these criticisms as well, and thus allowed Gabriella Epstein to write a Danny Phantom comic that sort of retcons/changes the ending of the show. But I'm getting ahead of myself there. For now, all you need to know is that the show is pretty beloved and admired by many, myself included, and this comic was released long after the fact and had a lot of hype and build-up surrounding it, because it brought back one character that pretty much everyone who watched the original Danny Phantom series wanted to see, and that character is Dark Danny, the evil future version of Danny Phantom that was teased to return at the end of his special, but sadly never made it into the show due to its early cancellation. So now that I've caught you guys up to speed, let me explain my thoughts. I think this comic does a pretty poor job at continuing the Danny Phantom story, and kind of ruined Dark Danny. So now, without further ado, allow me to explain why I think that in the next segment of this video.
Where is he? Where's our son?
What have you done to our boy?
I am your boy.
What?
Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the plot twist of the comics. You see, in this comic, it's revealed that ghosts are actually tied to emotion, and that Danny's powers are tied to his state of mind, and were malfunctioning due to him losing his purpose as a ghost hunter. Listen, I don't care that this twist is retconning old ghost lore, I just personally don't think it makes sense. Because, as Danny puts it himself in this comic, he's a teenager. He doubts his true purpose all the time. We see this in the show. Like, there's times where he's confident in himself, and episodes where he's not. And in those episodes, his powers don't just start going on the fritz for no reason. Take Phantom Planet, for example. His powers weren't on the fritz then, even though he literally doubted himself and wanted to quit being Danny Phantom. His powers remained until he purposefully removed them. They didn't start malfunctioning because of his emotions towards them. So why are they doing so now in this comic? Also, Vlad basically had a purpose in all of his appearances and was almost always constantly working towards some sort of goal. So, was he at full power all the time? If so, then how did Danny ever manage to beat him? And how come Vlad, who had his powers for over 10 years, never realized that his strong emotions were what made his powers stronger? It's simply too big of a thing for him to have missed, especially with all the powers he's said to have mastered, and with all the ghost lore we know he studies up on. Also, does Clockwork technically have a purpose? All he does is watch time and refuses to change it, unless told to do so. So like, what's his purpose/endgame? And if he doesn't have one, why did Dark Danny think he was stronger than him? Was it just the time powers? Those can be countered by fusing the medallions into himself. So why not just do that like he did in Ultimate Enemy, and then leave his domain and just go cause destruction? But I'm getting far too nitpicky with it. Basically, to me, this concept makes zero sense. Mainly because it implies that the ghosts always need to have a purpose or else they won't exist and can never waver in it, which just seems weird to me. Like, Skulker can never decide to stop hunting ever, instead of it just being a quirk of him being alive for centuries and presumably being bored and needing to have something to do. He's now bound to it in order to exist. And also, even though I said I didn't care about this retconning old ghost lore, I was lying. Seriously, what does this mean for ghosts like Desiree, who is literally showcased to be the ghost of a living person? Did her want to give others wishes allow allow her to become a ghost after she died? If so, like, how? Seriously, how? That makes no sense. Sorry, I know I'm rambling, but in conclusion, I don't like this concept because it's just kind of retconning things for the sake of retconning things, and makes very little sense when actually applied to the show, and to the vast spectrum of human emotions that are literally scientifically proven to constantly fluctuate anyways. I prefer the original explanation of ghosts just being dead humans that passed on into the afterlife, that in this universe would be the ghost zone and came back. And before I get accused of being a purist of the show, you should know that I also liked Butch Hartman's idea that ghosts were all monsters born of ectoplasm. I just didn't like that it was seemed to be retconning the previous explanation, because I felt like it could have worked with the previous explanation. So yeah, both Butch's explanation and the dead ghost explanation are both far better to me than this new explanation that feels like it's there just to change things again and make things more confusing. But hey, who knows? Maybe in the next comic we'll get another explanation that clears everything up somehow. For now though, let's just move on to my next point about Dark Danny in the Ultimate Enemy episode, shall we?
I suppose out of respect for our past, I should let you live. But that's not how I work.
Alright, so this is kind of the whole reason I'm making this video, because to be honest with you guys, I don't rewatch Danny Phantom as often as I used to, but I still make time for the Ultimate Enemy episode because it is undoubtedly the best piece of media to come out of this franchise, ever. And unfortunately, I was greatly let down by the comic and its interpretation of Dark Danny. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, as usual. First, let's talk about who Dark Danny is. Dark Danny is Danny's evil future self who, after absorbing Vlad's ghost half, went insane and became pure evil and started murdering hundreds of thousands of people. So, naturally, because we live in a society obsessed with complex characters and redemption arcs, Dark Danny, the guy that murdered millions of people, was saved and redeemed by Vlad by the end of the comic, and is now presumably no longer evil, which is really, really dumb. I was gonna go on a tangent here about this, but I'm just gonna give you guys a highlight reel of sorts of all of Dark Danny's most evil moments, and let you guys decide for yourselves if this character really deserved to be redeemed.
Some things, my boy, are better left unsaid.
I don't have to waste you. I just have to run out the clock until your entire life falls apart.
Like I went to seed right after you destroyed my vocal cords with that ghostly wail of yours!
How about 2,000?
Yeah, Dark Danny doesn't deserve a redemption. He is meant to be a pure evil character that was meant to showcase / warn Danny about just how bad things could be if he didn't do the right thing. In A Glitch in Time, however, he's nothing like he was originally depicted. Like at one point Danny asks him why he's so mean, and I'm just like, Danny, you know why. He's your evil self mixed with Vlad's evil ghost half. And for some reason, when Dark Danny's begging for his life at the end of the comic, everyone suddenly feels bad for the guy? I'm sorry, did y'all just forget that he tried to murder everyone? Like literally everyone in the world twice just because he felt like it? He deserves to be erased from existence, especially because it's his own fault that he is getting erased. In the first place, he absorbed clockwork in order to gain his power and tried to destroy Danny's timeline and future. So I don't feel bad that he's getting erased as a result of that when he's beaten. And it should also be pointed out that his original timeline is gone too, so why shouldn't he be erased? People are gonna think that's kind of harsh, but hey, that version of Valerie didn't deserve to get erased, but she did, so why shouldn't Dark Danny, the much eviler person who caused that timeline to be so terrible, be erased too? It's like if Hitler was the only remaining survivor of Earth. It's like, well, you might as well kill him. None of this is helped by the fact that Dark Danny isn't like depowered or anything by the end of the story, so he could theoretically just come back and do the same thing anyways all over again. Jeez, even criminals have to go to jail for a period of time before they're redeemed in the eyes of the laws, but not Dark Danny, I guess. The guy that murdered pretty much everyone in his timeline, he can just go back to being a regular old 14-year-old boy now, thanks to Vlad. It doesn't help too that the special made it out like he had over 10 years to change his ways, and he just kept on killing people, regardless of that fact. So basically, 10 years wasn't enough for him to change, but one conversation with Danny and Vlad and Clockwork was. I don't know, man. This just feels like character assassination to me. Like, even his motives don't make sense. He's mad Danny ruined his perfect future. He never cared about the future in his special. He only wanted to continue preserving his own existence. That's why he did everything he did. He didn't actually value his timeline at all. Nor was he striving for some higher purpose to make the timeline in some kind of image. He was just destroying and killing people because he was an insane murderous psychopath, which is really the big detail I want to stress here. Dark Danny was pure evil in his original special, and is now being redeemed with very little explanation or reasoning, or at least not a good explanation or reasoning that fits with that original depiction. And so I think that this redemption arc for him is so rushed and awful that it drags down the whole comic story. It doesn't help that even Butch Hartman was afraid of this back in the day and didn't put Dark Danny in the Phantom Planet for exactly this reason. And I'm not trying to excuse Butch Hartman's crimes here, guys. I'm just saying that even he knew better than to use Dark Danny when not needed. Which is saying a lot, considering his reputation these days. But anyways, guys, I've ranted on long enough about Dark Danny. Basically, I find this redemption arc to be rushed, nonsensical, and unnecessary for his character, as he truly wasn't meant to be redeemed in his original special. So I don't see what adding on a tacked-on redemption arc does for this story, especially when they already had one with Vlad, which, despite my misgivings about it, was at least a little bit better because it was actually set up in the original series. But again, I'm rambling. Let's move on to the last thing that I think kind of ruined the comic for me personally, the ending. Alright, so this is the part of the comic that really had me scratching my head, and is why there's no positivity segment here in this video like I usually do, because basically everything I liked about this story was undone by the ending. Let me explain. You see, the ending pulled what I like to call a Spider-Man One More Day by making it so everyone forgets who Danny is, and reverting the story back to what it was pre-Phantom Planet, i.e. nobody knows Danny is Danny Phantom, and they all hate Danny Phantom, and he has to keep his secret identity safe. Now, yes, this isn't the first time in history that something like this has happened in the Danny Phantom series, but the thing that really annoyed me about this comic doing it was the fact that I actually liked seeing Jazz, Danny, and Tucker, and Sam working as ghost hunters for the state, alongside some of their former enemies from high school, because it felt like the series was finally moving on from Phantom Planet, which is kinda what I was hoping this comic would be, a continuation and not a reset. Plus, it was a new status quo, and there were interesting things you could do with this scenario. Now that Danny is aligned with the general public, perhaps he has to take on a more diplomatic role when hunting ghosts, and helping them out when the guys in white overstep their boundaries. But now, that's all gone. I know people weren't a fan of the Phantom Planet ending, but I liked it. The fact that the secret was finally out in the open was just kind of a breath of fresh air, because by the time of season 3, the show had already revealed Danny's identity twice before, and pulled this whole mind reversal thing as well. So I was glad to see the show kind of throw that away and have Danny finally embrace his true identity. Normally I don't hate stories that go in a different direction to what I was expecting, because I understand that the authors have their own visions of the stories in mind, but the problem here for me is that I've already seen the whole Danny keeps his secret identity thing so many times in the show proper, and I'm not interested in this comic series if it's just gonna be that, but in comic form. Maybe if they had pitched this as more of a soft reboot, I would have been more okay with it, but this was pitched as the sequel to The Ultimate Enemy, the greatest episode of Danny Phantom ever in my opinion, and instead it turned out to just be a lazy redemption arc for the character and a soft reboot of the whole Danny Phantom universe. They're probably gonna make more of these comics too, and there's already a sequel announced and on the way, but I'm genuinely just not interested. I wanted to see something new, not the same thing again in comic form, if that makes sense to you guys. But I do want to at least leave a little positivity here, so I'll say that Gabriella Epstein mostly got the dynamic between Danny and his friends and Jazz right. I just feel like the author would have been better off not including Dark Danny in this comic, and starting off a little smaller scale, and then transitioning into a larger story with Dark Danny coming back, because as it stands right now, I don't much care for this comic, and I'm probably not going to reread it that often, at least not as often as I rewatch the Ultimate Enemy episode. So yeah, that was my thoughts on the Danny Phantom comic, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I know the audio was a little weaker this time around. I was trying to get this video done fast and didn't notice it until later, so I apologize for that. And if you are new around here, I recommend subscribing if you enjoy my content, as it greatly helps me out. That's all for now though, guys. See you guys in my next upload.